Have you ever had a craving for some kind of food and thought, I want it, I need it, I deserve it, it's a treat, I've got to have it? Molière once said you should eat to live and not live to eat. And most of us recognize that there is something unhealthy about these strong urges, these cravings, these things that feel overwhelming and out of control around food. So today I'd like to talk to you about a client of mine, we'll call her Sarah, and how she shifted her relationship to food and what it meant to her so that she could have a healthier approach and make better choices because she felt less driven and more able to actually choose for herself. When I met Sarah, she was a young woman in her first year at university, and she had been struggling with binge eating. She would go out to the local convenience store and stock up on treats that she would take back to her dorm room and eat in secret. We slowly unpicked a lot of the different questions that were involved with this and applied all of the food foundations that I've been talking about, looking at the emotional side of things, at her motivation towards change, working on tapping to calm cravings, and also looking at her relationship with food. How did she see food? What was she eating? Was she really nourishing herself? And what did she want to be eating? She had been vegetarian for quite a long while, and that was in some ways impinging the quality of the nourishment that she was getting. And that was definitely one of the things that we had to work on. Vegetarian lifestyle can be extremely healthy. However, it does mean that you need to pay attention to getting enough of all the different micro and macronutrients that you need. And sometimes dorm food is not really up to that job because the people who are cooking it aren't really that focused on it necessarily, especially not for a vegetarian palate. So that oftentimes she had just been having things like pasta, which wasn't meeting her nutritional requirements. So we really had to dig deeply into that aspect, as well as the fact that emotionally she was seeing the binge foods as being a companion, a way of working through her loneliness at being separated from her family, her anxiety about whether she'd made the right choices around her degree subject. And still, it was also these thoughts and feelings around food itself. So I shouldn't eat certain kinds of foods. I should only eat a certain amount. I need to watch what I'm eating and watch what my weight is, that had been causing her to perhaps not eat as well as she could do, to not truly nourish herself. So we spent some of our time actually looking at what good nutrition would look like and about her feelings around that, of actually taking care of herself. She felt like it was hard work to have to put in the effort for meal planning, and yet she also recognized that by not doing so, she was actually undermining her own desire to eat healthily, because part of the binging was actually her body saying to her that she wasn't getting enough of the nutrients that she needed. And some of the changes were really quite simple. Things like adding in a green smoothie so that she was getting more of the micronutrients that she required. Looking to get more legumes into her diet so that as a vegetarian she was still getting sufficient protein for her needs. So there is an element where there was an important part of the work that wasn't only about the emotions and wasn't about calming the cravings for the foods that she was binging on, but actually looking at her thoughts and beliefs about food more generally, about whether or not she was getting enough food and whether or not she was getting the right kinds of food. So these can be really important questions to look at as well in order to get the full picture around your eating and around the things that will be triggering desires and cravings for foods that you know are unhealthy, you know are not serving you, and that you know that you don't really need. While I'm not a nutritionist, I was able to help Sarah to find the right information that she needed and to start to make changes. And some of that was also about the psychological side of that, the feeling whether or not it was okay to be a vegetarian, whether or not it was okay to make her own food when there was dorm food, whether or not it was okay for her to want to change her weight. And a lot of these questions were things that she hadn't really considered before, so that actually looking at them, reflecting on them, finding her own answers was a really important part of putting in place healthier choices that helped her to make a shift that was manageable in the long term, rather than the more kind of diet mentality of feast and famine, don't eat for a while and then do eat, and so on. And it gave her a better understanding of her body and of why she might be having these cravings, both at an emotional level and also at a physical level, in terms of her hunger hormone and when she was eating, and also in terms of getting enough of the right kind of nutrition to satisfy her body's real natural needs. There is a lot of information out there about how you can eat healthily and well, and it can also be great to go and see a nutritionist for a little while to check out whether what you're eating really is fulfilling all those needs. You can, of course, also use programs such as Zoe, and this is not a paid placement, that helps you to assess what you're eating currently, how it's affecting your body, and what might be better choices for you in the long run, so that you can feel truly satisfied and nourished. Within all of this, as I say, partly it was the actual physical elements of the food that she needed. And there were also emotional aspects, both to her life in general, for example, feeling lonely because she wasn't with her family, feeling anxious about her subject choices and her outlook for the future and her future career. And there were also the emotional elements around whether or not it was okay to nourish her body, what her body really needed, and how she felt about those needs, that are partly to do with the actual food and partly to do with the thoughts and beliefs that were connected with those foods. So all of these are different aspects that it can be useful to consider when looking at your own food choices in the light of all the information that you have available. If you'd like a little bit of help with the more meditative side of that and the more emotional side, I have a whole selection of videos that look at the different emotions that most often underlie emotional eating and what you can do to shift and change those.